Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Mary Catherine Duffy, and I am the Director of Professional Development here at the Southwestern Association of Episcopal Schools. And we're so glad to have you here for our webinar on fundraising. We have two great panelists today that I'm going to introduce in just a minute, Matt and Christy, and we're glad y'all are here. So I want to do a few housekeeping items first. I want you to know that this recording will be available to you in a couple of days. We will give you the resources that are accompanying the recording, so no need to take notes. We're going to give you the slide deck and all of that. You can interact in a couple of ways. You can ask questions or in the Q&A box, or you can interact via the chat. So had a couple of people already tell us where they're from. We're glad to have everyone here, and we're going to go ahead and share the screen and get started. Okay, let's see here. Sorry, guys. Let me see if I can make this happen here. Can y'all see it? Can y'all see what you need to see?
Yeah.
Do we see best practices of fundraising? All right. Although I've lost all of y'all here. Hang on just a second. Sorry, I lost you all and then I couldn't find you again. So let me. It's all going to work out. I promise. There we go. Okay. All right. So this is one of my favorite webinars to do, honestly. And Matt and Christy and I've talked about this. Part of the reason that this is an important webinar for SAES is because we have such a variety of schools in the association that we really, we range from little bitty preschools who have one head of school that's raising all the money, all the way to a place like Cassidy or Trinity that has a variety of people doing that job. And so one of my goals here today is to just give as much super good information around fundraising so that the people on this webinar can take it away and either do it themselves or present it to the people that are working with them. So I'm really happy that we have Matt and Christy on here today. What we're going to be doing is I'm going to talk a little bit about Matt and Christy and welcome them. And then we're going to talk for just a minute about why we fundraise, who we are calling when we fundraise, and what we're doing with it. Then we're going to get into some tactical steps specifically around annual giving. Christy, I'm sure, is going to talk about the fact that she's got her gala this week. So that's another way we fundraise. There's lots of ways in which we fundraise, but the specific stuff we'll talk about is annual giving. And then I'm going to throw it to Matt and Christy to give them an opportunity to give you some ideas and takeaways that they use at their schools. So first of all, Matt, Christy, welcome. We're glad you're here. As you can see, both of them are super talented and have lots and lots of experience. I'd love to give you just a minute, and I'm going to start with you, Matt, to just kind of tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do for Cassidy.
Thank you. It's actually it's an honor to be here with both Christy and Mary Catherine. They're a lot of fun to work with and a lot of fun to talk to about fundraising. I think what you'll get from all of us as you go through this is that we have a real passion for what we're doing, and we really like to talk about it. What I do here for Cassidy is that I'm the director of campaigns. I help manage not only our major gift and our capital projects, but I also help with our annual campaign. And what you'll find with the annual campaigns is that it's sort of the springboard for everything else that you're going to do. And so they're increasingly more and more important. But in my career, I've done it for a little over 16 years. I've had the opportunity to serve lots of different types of nonprofits, just like Christy has. So what that means is that you get sort of a wealth of, you start developing a wealth of knowledge about how to work with people where they're at. And so again, I'm really happy to be on this call. I'm hoping that as we go through that there's at least one little nugget that you're able to take away from it and apply to your own schools. And thank you for having me.
Great, thanks. Okay, Christy, tell us about yourself.
Okay, well, I'm going to join Matt in saying I'm excited to be here and thank you for letting us be a part of today. I do love fundraising. It has been tons of fun to meet Matt and Mary Catherine and just envision what today could look like and talk about different things we want to share with you. made lots of mistakes and had lots of wins, and still love the work. And I hope that you're enjoying what you do too. My mom was a school teacher, so currently being at Trinity is really lovely for me. It reminds me a lot of the school where I grew up. And I think education is the great equalizer. So it's just an honor to get to raise money for such a good cause.
Awesome. Okay, so when we started kind of planning this webinar, the three of us really felt like that this was an important conversation to have around why we even fundraise. One of the things that I believe many school parents don't understand is why independent schools fundraise. And I would even say that I'm not sure even some board members understand that. And so I wanted to just start with this question of why. And I'm gonna start with Matt, and I'm just gonna get you, Matt, just to tell us a little bit about why you think why do we fundraise in independent schools? Why is that even necessary?
Well, I mean, to begin with, I think we all know that tuition doesn't cover the cost of everything that provides the vibrant education that we're providing to our students. And so just right off the top, right off the bat, that is one of the biggest reasons that you'll fundraise every year, especially with the annual fund, is that the cost of tuition simply does not cover the cost of providing a wonderful educational experience. We also fundraise to continue to be on the forefront of educational technology, to make sure that our pedagogy and the way that we're educating our students is appropriate and preparing them for college. That takes resources, and those resources aren't always covered by tuition. These are really important things to consider when you're building your annual fund. One of the things that I always talk about is that when you're talking about your annual fund, it's really just the beginning of the fundraising process. You get somebody to begin to give annually, that's your pot for major gift fundraising. And that's, again, that's a topic for a whole nother webinar. But to begin with, we fundraise for independent schools for those reasons. That the cost of tuition doesn't cover everything. And then we also need to continue to fundraise to make sure that we are on the forefront of educational technology and always pushing that envelope as far as we can.
Yeah, one of the things that I always said to people too is that, I mean, so there would be people that would say, hey, well, why don't you just charge what the tuition, why don't you just charge what it costs? Well, guess what? Because that's going to cut out a ton of people that can't afford that. And we're looking for diversity and inclusivity in our schools, especially Episcopal schools. And so I think this idea of bridging the gap, it's not just about, well, we can't cover our costs. It's about creating opportunity for all kinds of people to be parts of our community. So I love that. Thank you so much. So Christy, then we have to ask the question, and I'm going to tell you that I ran into this a lot I'm in my mid 50s, and I grew up in kind of a culture of philanthropy where that's what you did is you gave. I don't think we see that today. And so how do we do that? How do we build a culture of philanthropy? Because part of the why is doing that. You're building and educating people to be givers. How do you do that?
You're so correct. It feels different to me than it did when I was growing up, for sure. I mean, to me, it all comes down to relationships at every turn and storytelling. So you have to inspire people to want to give so that they want to give transformationally and not transactionally. And so that comes down to storytelling. And it's really important. As we go through, we'll share some specific examples, but throughout the year, you should always be thinking about your annual fund, not just when it's campaign time. You need to keep stewarding, you need to keep telling your story. People give to big ideas. They give to excellence. And I think when it comes down to relationships, that's something that we've had to work really hard at Trinity. When I first arrived here, it was kind of a low point for the school. Actually, we had a head of school that was transitioning out, and we just had some negativity kind of throughout the school. And we've worked really, really hard to continue to tell the story of why we're all here and remind them of what brought them here in the first place, whether it's a teacher or a parent. And ultimately that gets you to a successful place to ask for a financial gift.
Yeah, I think I love that, because I think there's a really close connection between the marketing and the giving and the storytelling and everyone being engaged in the story of the school. So I love that. So Matt, you've said something about an annual giving, but what other kinds of fundraisers do you find to be most successful? I mean, we see most people are doing annual giving and they're doing a gala or an event. Is that kind of how you guys do it at Cassidy?
Well, I think when you started this webinar, one of the things that you said was that schools run a broad spectrum, that what may work here may not work for Christy at Trinity. And so here at Cassidy, I kind of say it really depends on the community. For example, we'll do snail mail, email, social media, personal visits, but we don't generally have an event that supports our annual fund. We do have an annual event, and typically that's run by our Cassidy Parents Organization, and it supports other very specific causes here on campus. But more often than not, what type of fundraisers I find to be most successful is, for me, I'm a major gifts fundraiser. That's how I've always positioned myself. And it's really, as Christy had said, it's about relationship development and being in that moment. So there are events that I would style as friend raisers versus fundraisers.
Right.
It's an opportunity to communicate what your goals and plans are, either for a project or for the year, what the next chapter of the school is. But the fundraisers that I find to be most successful, and again, it comes with building a culture of philanthropy. But we had two, and there'll be examples of it a little later in the webinar, but we really have 2 times a year where we really hammer, we go after our families, and it's really right around the beginning of the school year, and it's right around Christmas. We'll raise nearly $800,000 during those 2 time frames. And it really is just a snail mail, email, social media push, getting out, personally visiting with people. You cannot take that for granted. There's so much power that comes from sitting in a room with someone and explaining to them why the annual fund is critical to the success of the school, and being able to listen to where they see their philanthropy having a positive impact on the things that you're trying to get done. Those are the types of fundraisers that I find to be most successful. Events are wonderful. Events can raise some serious dollars if you do it the right way. It's funny to say that as I'm transitioned to my leadership role here at Cassidy, that was one of the things I told them I didn't want to do anymore, was event fundraising, because I really enjoy the underwriting process and I really enjoy being at the event.
Right.
But for me, it's all about the relationship development. I enjoy small group gatherings where you can take a small group of individuals who've had a positive impact on the school and talk to them about what the future looks like, so that you can listen to how they see their position to affect the future. It's those are the types of fundraisers that I at least for me, and Christy, you may have more to add since you do have your gala coming up, but those are the types of fundraisers that I typically see being most effective.
Yeah, I think to that point about friend raising versus fundraising, I many of our schools are doing events, and those are kind of a combination of both. And so this idea of friend raising, it creates an opportunity for people to get together and to love what they do and to, build relationship. And then it turns into the opportunity to go back and ask for money. So I love that. So in terms of fundraising and how much you should be raising, one of the things that SAES really encourages is that you are covering your costs with about 85 to 90% of hard income. And that's tuition and fees, or, whatever it is, it may be aftercare that you include in there based on, we talked about this a couple of days ago on the strategic financial plan. The best practice from our perspective is that you're not fundraising more than 10 to 15% of your budget. Let me just say for the record that there were years that I fundraised 30% of my budget, and it's brutal. And so we really encourage from a fundraising standpoint that you are covering the majority of your income. 85 to 90% of your income is covered by hard income. Okay, so we've talked about the why. Let's talk about the who. Many of the donors, these are just a group of people that, if you're in a parish day school, I know Cassidy's an independent school, but from a parish day school, I think Trinity is too, actually. If you're in a parish day school, you have a few more donors that you could go after, but typically our donors are our parents, our alumni. In a parish day school, the parishioners. At our school at St. Albans in Harlingen, The parishioners were a huge amount of our givers. They gave a lot of money to the school because they considered it an outreach. Grandparents, friends. Christy, anybody else that we're missing as far as people that you might consider to be your donors?
Our faculty and staff.
Faculty and staff, that's right. That's a good one. Okay, so we talked about why and we talked about who. So part of, Christy, the story is always talking about how are you, the what are you doing this for? And what are you raising money for? And I just put a bunch of pictures on here thinking about the things that we raise money for. Matt kind of mentioned technology, playground equipment, facilities, books. What else? What are things that you guys, Christy, are thinking about when you're asking for money, how you will raise that, how you will use those funds?
And you mean specifically for annual fund?
Well, it can be, well, you've got your gala coming up. I mean, we're going to talk about annual giving, but do you delineate, like at our school, we didn't always have the ability to say annual drive covers the gap and now we're going to do this event and it's going to pay for blank. Most of the time, both of those combined covered our gap. And I think that's true for a lot of schools. So, but either way, we still had to kind of sell the idea of, nobody wants to give money to the electricity bill. They don't. I'm like, you're not going, hey, give money so we can pay our telephone bill. But if we're saying, hey, we're going to update our curriculum this year, then hey, give money because we're going to buy new math curriculum. That's a better story, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. So we do fundraise for a lot of different things, and annual fund specifically, we'll talk about this a little bit later in the presentation. Our annual fund is a very short annual fund in terms of the timeline of it. And what we really try to drive home during that period is the excellence of our school and that a rising tide lifts all boats. And my personal philosophy, and I talk about this a lot with donors, in terms of independent schools and why you should give to your school, not just to cover the gap. And of course, you mentioned earlier tuition. Why don't we just charge the full tuition? But I believe it's really important in an independent school to invest in your school. You have a very different sense of ownership when you have skin in the game from your heart and not just your wallet.
Right. I love that.
So I talk about that a lot when we talk about the annual fund, and it does cover every part of the school. We do a lot of little snippets and interviews with faculty and staff and children during campaign, leading up to campaign, and even stewarding people after the campaign, just to talk about their experience on campus. Why are they here? Why do they love it? We have teachers talk about their professional development experiences they've received, maybe at a conference, and that they've brought back into the classroom and translate it very specifically. And that plays really well, to our audience.
Yeah, PD is a good place a lot of times that's an easy sell to get people to give money for PD. I love that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'd like to switch gears and go specifically to the idea of annual giving. And we're going to spend the next few slides just talking some tactical things about when you are going to do an annual giving campaign, how to begin that, kind of what that looks like. And then we're going to end with Matt and Christy giving you guys some thoughts around some specific things that they do at their schools. So anytime you start an annual giving campaign, you want to prepare well in advance. And I think this is something that people don't necessarily understand. I would usually begin kind of my preparation in late April, early May. Our event was usually, and I'm with you, Matt, to be frank, I love annual giving. I love to solicit underwriting for the event, but I'm out on the event planning. I want to go and I want to talk to everybody, and I will shake you down for money at that gala, but I don't like to plan it. But this stuff gets me excited. And so I would usually, once our event was over, I would start thinking about annual fund for the fall. And the reason you do that is because you gotta, there were years that I didn't have a team helping me, and those were the harder years. So I would encourage you to start kind of, April, May. I would encourage you to create a leadership team of people that are already givers to your school that would be willing to help spread the message, tell the story, to Christy's, kind of using Christy's words, telling the story. This is a time in which you would create a logo, any kind of brochures or educational materials. Videos are great. I think I think it's easy to do a video. It's expensive to do videos if you want to go expensive, but there are these little things called an iPhone, and they're pretty good, and you can use them for all kinds of things. And so it doesn't have to be an expensive video, but videos tell stories. And so I would encourage you to do that. Create a timeline of events. Christy, this is a logo that we did at St. Albans years ago, and this may have been my last year actually. And it's the idea of being invested is kind of what we talked a lot about. I'm invested in the school, I'm invested in the community, and so doing all of these things in the beginning. Is this when y'all do, Matt and Christy, both of you, but Matt, you can go first. Is this kind of how y'all start your preparation?
Yeah, I think the annual fund here at Cassidy runs a little bit different, and it runs the full fiscal year. We go from July to June. So, and there's seasons to that. So, and that's important to note. But of your bullet points that you have, the one that I find to be what's most often skipped is the creating a timeline of events.
Yeah.
It's really, really important to create a timeline of communication, because as a school, you take the amount of communication that's going out to your current parents. It's a bunch. I don't know about Trinity, but at Cassidy, as a current parent, I have 2 children here. We're receiving, 3 and 4 emails a week, just about different things, athletics, events, their classroom stuff. And so you don't want your annual fund appeal or any type of social media push or an email. You don't want it to get lost in the shuffle. You want it to be something that hits their inbox and that they have the time and they look at it. And so if you create a timeline, it gives you the opportunity to back into that work. And so if I know that our first major drop is going to be in August, well, you know what? We start talking about it in June. We start talking about the theme. We start talking about any additions or changes we want to make to the pledge card, what type of social media push is going to look like. And so you're not rushing, and it's something that you're able to work with your team in preparing for. But in order to do that, you have to create a timeline. You have to work your plan.
Well, and it keeps you organized too. Christy, I know y'all do it kind of like we did, where you put it into one big month, which we're going to talk about, where you'll make one big push. Any thoughts on this step before we go to the next slide?
Yeah, so I totally agree with Matt. And we do condense our all out campaign to 3 weeks. However, obviously we plan for it all year, and we will always accept money any time of year. It's just that the emails and the push is for a 3-week period of time, and a timeline will save you or break you. I totally agree with that. Yeah. And my best friend used to say, plan your work and work your plan.
Yeah. And that's the whole thing around, I think, to Matt's point about the timeline, that's what you're using to educate your constituencies about the annual fund. And make no mistake, you never stop educating. You never stop talking about it, because people will still say, why are we doing this? What are we doing? And it's people that you're like, you've given for 10 years. Why are you still asking me this? But the reality is that it's an ongoing thing. And so what I tended to do is I tended to make pretty significant presentations to my board and faculty in August. I would have done all that work. And then August, we're really touching on board and faculty. Often I would have a leadership gift event where I was asking people, this is kind of to Matt's point about, excuse me, about relationships. We would invite people that we knew were going to be big givers to this event, and we would have an alumni talk, or we would have a board member talk. And then we had done already all of that before we even got to parents. Everybody has new parent and back to school events. We started kind of using those opportunities to educate. We did an annual fund kickoff video, usually at the very beginning of that period of time. And then of course, email blasts. And we did it every which way. And to Matt's point, what you have to do also is you have to be coordinating with all the teams on your leadership. So making sure that if you're sending something out about the annual fund, that somebody from admissions isn't sending something out the same day. I think that's really important as well. So this is absolutely the most important thing I think you can say. And this is that the board and faculty need to be giving at 100% before you send out. That is a huge message to your constituency. If your board is not giving it 100%, that's a problem. And I mean, that's pretty blunt. And I know that. I'm not going to say that necessarily about faculty, although I would say to my faculty, I don't really care what you give. I just care that you give, because here's the deal. If everybody's giving something, that's 100% participation. That's the strength of it. It's not about, oh, all gave $1,000 or $10,000. It's not about that. It's about, we all gave, we're all invested. And so Christy, do you have thoughts on this? I'm sure you do.
I 100% agree. And I will tell you something really kind of funny. We have a person who works here. He's wonderful. He supports his family here and in another country. And the cultural piece of this has been a little more challenging for him. However, he brings me one quarter every fall and hands me a quarter, and he participates.
Yeah.
And that quarter, means a lot to me, because I know a little bit more about his background and what he's dealing with, but he's in it.
Yeah.
So we have people who give a quarter. We have people that give, $5,000 on faculty and staff.
Yeah.
And it's just so important to be able to say to people 100%. I agree.
Okay, so the steps during this annual giving month. Now, I know Matt said that they do year round, and lots of schools do that. And it's not that we didn't do it year round too. We kind of, but what we did is we focused a month, and it was usually October or September, where we really tried to just get everybody to either give their pledges or their gifts. A lot of schools have pledges more than actual cash. And if especially, smaller schools will do this, where they can write it out over a period of 9 months. And we do that. We sent an appeal letter from the leadership team to parents. We'd send out a brochure. We did a class contest. A lot of schools don't do this. We did a class contest. It was participation. It was not on the amount they gave. We sent reminders. We did lots and lots of thank you notes. Be sure that you create an online opportunity for giving. PayPal, I don't care how you do it, but if you don't have an online opportunity, that's really going to limit your ability to get the money, because you want it to be convenient. You want it to be as convenient as possible, where people see the video, see the email and go, oh yeah, I forgot to do that. Click, and they can just give. So that was a big change for us. Some other ideas before we go to Matt and Christy's ideas. We did a leadership gift banner that I'm telling you was a game changer. We put them, all we did was buy banners, and every time you gave a gift of $1,000 or more, well, we did a couple of banners. We did a major benefactor gift, which was 5,000 or more, and then we did 1,000 or more. And when we started putting those at all the entrances where people walked in, game changer. People were like, what do I need to do to get on that banner? You just need to give. Okay. Put me down. I want on that banner. It's so interesting. And so we really began to get lots of feedback, and whatever works, right? We did a lot of reminder signs around campus. We did that thermometer sign of how we were doing and what was coming. Lots of, Christy kind of talked a little bit about this, these stories from teachers and parents. We did some emails called I'm Grateful emails, where people wrote out emails about what they were grateful about the community. That was awesome. The class participation contest incentives were things like, you can just give pizza parties all day long. That's all people want, free recess and pizza party, and they're in. And then we did an end of drive event where we invited the parents to come on campus and spend the day with their kids, spend lunch with their kids. We did some fun activities, and those are just additional, fundraising that we did. And then finally, we did a lot of final appeals. In a parish day school, it is important that you pay attention to your church. And when most Episcopal churches are canvassing for their gifts for stewardship in October, at least in my diocese, they are. And so we had a real effort to not try to be asking parishioners for money when we were asking them also for pledges. So we didn't usually appeal to our parishioners till later around December. But again, that kind of is up to you. You guys as independent schools don't have that issue, but it's real important that you pay attention to that. We did an end of year appeal. Kind of Matt talked a little bit about that. because people usually need to give money before the end of the year. And I cannot tell you enough, handwritten thank you notes are all of that. You cannot go wrong with handwritten thank you notes. Do you guys do handwritten thank you notes?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, it's just important.
Once
Okay.
you start-
And can I say one thing on
Absolutely.
that, Catherine? And I'm sure most schools are doing this, but one kind of easy win is every Friday or however your cadence needs to work, creating that spreadsheet for your head of school and your board chair with who gave, what they gave, what they gave
Yes.
to, and how to contact them. And then having a system in place of what level they need to call or reach out to, and also their friends, if they see a friend on that list.
Yeah, I think
really
that's
helpful.
super important. I agree, Christy. Because I was the fundraiser at my school, I knew I didn't have to do that. But I agree with you that if there is a head of school that is not fundraising too, and you're an advancement person or you are a fundraiser, you need to make sure that your head of school knows who is giving and what they're giving, because there is nothing worse. And believe me, I know this from experience. I had one year where I had a person that was fundraising for me, and there was a big old gift that I didn't get because I didn't know that I didn't know they wanted to hear from me. I just assumed, and that was a terrible idea. So really important for the head of school to be knowledgeable of who's given what. Okay, so I'd like to spend the last half of our webinar kind of giving Christy and Matt an opportunity to talk about some specific things that they do at their schools that are helpful when they do their annual giving. So Christy, I'm going to turn it over to you first, and you just let me know when it's time to, sorry.
Nope.
When you need to.
Can we get back to the pinwheel?
Yeah, let me go back here.
So while you're bringing that up, I'll just start and say that when I first began at Trinity, I mentioned earlier, the school was in a little bit of a low. And what I found was that a lot of parents didn't understand what philanthropy was at the school. They didn't know when we were going to ask, how we were going to ask, for what we would ask. And so I created this pinwheel so that I could actually just talk about philanthropy with people. And then it's really become part of our culture. And now at the new parent dinner that we have in April, once people get their acceptance and they've signed up to come to Trinity in the fall, we actually start this conversation at that dinner, and I have an opportunity to present the pinwheel. And I keep it pretty short. I just talk about the experience they're going to have here and the invitations that they will receive to be a part of our community in a really special way. And then I basically talk through the pinwheel, and I just say, the first time you'll be asked is October 1st to the annual fund. And I say, 10 seconds about what that is. And I just go through the blades. Horizons is something special we do at our school. It's a private school public purpose initiative where we bring in public school kids during the summer. And that's a really big feel good part of our school philanthropy. And what's nice is that when I then start to have those individual meetings like Matt talked about, I can bring this pinwheel with me. And it's amazing how many times people will look at it and point, and they'll say, I'm an event person, or they'll say, I hate events, but man, I love to give to endowment, or that Horizons thing really fires me up, or what's that capital project? They'll ask questions, and then obviously I'm getting to do a discovery visit, and then I find out how they actually want to be communicated with.
Yeah,
So
I love that.
Been really helpful.
All right, next slide.
Yeah, so at our school, we do a different theme every year for annual fund. And I wanted to show these two separate themes. You can obviously see the dates. When COVID first came and we needed to pick our theme, we had just started the 21-day approach the year before. It was brand new. It was very successful. We've raised tons more money doing it really, really short like that. And we didn't know what we were doing. It was COVID, and people were a little bewildered. So we kind of wanted to make it a little more serious, a little more spiritual feeling. And so we went with this Trinity Teachers Tornado Together Fund idea. And all of our messaging really talked about being together with this. And we had lots of great activities. The cutout, the actual paper piece of this that went home was a giant T cutout. And then we asked students to decorate their T and send us in photos or videos, because everybody was online. And then we would feature like different ones each week. And that was really fun because the families were all home together and they were doing this thing together. So fast forward to this year, it wasn't as difficult. We kind of knew what we were doing. We were on campus. And so we went with Wonderful. And we talked about all the very full and rich ways our school has come together and moves forward. And so just in terms of knowing your audience and knowing what moment you're in, I would say try to tailor your theme. If you
I love that. I love that.
Okay, so you talked about starting off with trustees and faculty and staff. Totally agree. We do our big presentation to faculty and staff during work week. And what we did the year that COVID 2020, we did these beautiful cards that we sent to every single teacher at home. And they each got, you can see the note on the right-hand side. This was just from our team because, you know, we have to make relationships, not just with the people that are parents and grandparents, alumni, but also internally. Those relationships really matter. And at a time when teachers were feeling exhausted and scared, this really went a long, long way. And so every year we do some version of this. Maybe it's a mailing, maybe it's something we deliver to them, some little token of our appreciation that they are the rock stars that inspire all giving at the school. So I just wanted to.
I love this. I love this because I mean, I think it's important. I think it's important that teachers hear that too. Sometimes we forget, right?
Okay, so when it comes to teachers, man, it is so important for them to be bought in and for them to feel good because they're like, you know, you pay me not as much as the rest of the world and I'm here a lot. I'm giving my heart, my soul, and now you're asking me to give actual cash on top of that back to the school. And so you want them to feel bought in. And each year we choose a different department or grade level to be the sponsor for faculty and staff. This year for our wonderful theme in the fall, we chose the kindergarten and first grade teams. They're especially strong as a unit. They're hilarious. And so every year at work week, whoever's sponsoring does a presentation to ask the faculty and staff for their gift. So Mary Catherine, if we could go to the 110 mark, I want to show you, and I'll give you some background. The kindergarten does a talent show every year at our school, and it's huge. It's hilarious. The things that the kids bring for their talent are hysterical. So our K and first grade teams put on a talent show for the faculty and staff.
Great. Sorry.
So this is them doing their talent. So they've talked about annual fund at this point. It was hilarious. I wish we could play the whole video, but you'll get it in the slides. But they've talked about annual fund to the audience, and now they're doing the talent portion of their presentation.
So before we start that, I think what's really cool about this, Christy, what the idea about this is that oftentimes it's the people asking the faculty to give are the people that are in leadership.
Yeah.
And I love that these people are asking their colleagues to give. They're saying, we're giving, we're asking you to give. And so I love that. I wonder, you know what? We may have time to watch the whole thing. Do you think we should watch the whole front part too?
It's pretty cute if we have time.
Okay, let me just start it at least here.
Toilet, flush these down the toilet. Dale! And building D.
Oh, and okay, let me also say they were wearing QR codes that literally worked.
Okay.
For annual.
Is that snapping with both hands? Both hands! Oh, cheer!
Oh my gosh. Wow.
He's a professional dance teacher.
I'd say so.
The best part of this video is at the very end. So these are all their talents. they got a full standing ovation. And then when we went to the parents, in October, so this is August, when we started the actual kickoff in October, we sent the 100% participation message with this video. And
I
parents
love that. I think that's great because it really does develop team spirit and camaraderie. And what a great way to get people excited. Okay.
Okay, so I don't know if you guys get this, but at our school, especially in major gift fundraising, we get a lot of the, have you talked to the Dells? Have you talked to Elon Musk? Well, no, because they don't go to school here. So how about instead of this, we do this? And it comes back to that storytelling and making it really personal for people and reminding them, what their child is getting out of it. We do little things like we bring parents to campus individually. For example, there's a couple that moved here from California, and they are scientists and they love our D-Lab and the technology things that we do with the kids. And so just very casually, I invited them to come one day and see the kids in action, not as something separate that was, it was staged, just see whatever's happening. And we went from the lower school D-Lab to the middle school D-Lab, and it just blew them away. They ended up giving to Annual Fund, which was great. And then 3 months into being here, they made a 6-figure gift to our capital campaign. And I think it was because they saw what their kid was getting to see every day.
Yeah.
And it was no cost to us. It was just a few minutes of my time, to get them here. So
Yeah.
I think just reminding people why it's really personal.
Oh, wait a second. Sorry.
That's okay.
There we go.
Yeah, and so we talked about the pinwheel earlier. I just wanted to share this as an example because when we talk about storytelling, it's so important for people to see and feel themselves in any story. And this family met with us, and we just really talked about their experience at Trinity. And I hope you'll watch the whole video at some point. But it brought, literally the cameraman, everybody in the room was bawling when this family left, because they spoke from such a place of their heart.
Right.
Minutes and 20 seconds. And this family just
I'm going to go to the last 30 seconds here,
Yeah.
right?
Let's do that.
So
And
it's
then
how
we
many?
can-
Big brother. Everyone's life is going to be your children.
I asked his father if he would
When
look at
you
his
look
son
at
and
when all we could do is set you up to be happy.
Okay. Are you ready for this? All right, let's start it.
What we could do is set you up to be happy, to be healthy, and to be a full human being. And when you look back, hopefully that's what you'll say to your children, that your parents gave you that gift.
Aw.
so the parents first spoke to the camera and talked about why they brought their kids to Trinity and why it matters. And then I sort of actually on a lark at the end, because Kenai, the little boy, wanted to be in the film, but he wasn't originally. So we just said, well, would you talk directly to Kenai and tell him why you brought him to Trinity? And he did. And the whole video is very moving.
Oh, now that the thing about it is that's the storytelling that we're talking about. Why people do what they do. That's what people want to give to. I love it. Okay.
This was just a graphic I wanted to share. Before Wordle was the game Wordle, you might remember there's an app called Wordle that you could put words into. And so we've been using something similar to this each year, just because, to your point, Annual Fund covers everything. And so we just wanted a visual reminder of what everything looks like. And then in terms of stewardship, just be creative. You don't have to spend a lot of money. It can be just a handwritten note. For us, 2 years ago, we sent these cute little pair of Trinity socks to all the chairs and all the class leaders. And this was our little note with it, and people wear the socks a lot. It surprises me, actually.
That's that's really cute, actually. Knock the socks off Annual Fund. I like it.
And then the next slide, this one, I just wanted to use this as an example. This happens to be another family with our D-Lab specifically. And this was a few months after, maybe 2 months after Annual Fund had completed, and they were leadership donors. And I happened to be in the D-Lab one day for totally different reasons. And this cute little experiment was happening. and the first kids to have theirs work, I could see it unfolding. And so I just grabbed my phone and took a video of the moment and then sent it to the parents with this note.
Yeah, I think also to this point is that throughout the year, as Matt was talking about, that's what Matt's talking about the throughout the year stuff. We're not ever stopping the conversation. We're sending things. Hey, see this is what we did. We're able to do with your contribution. I love that. I think that's great. All right. Thank you, Christy. That was good stuff.
Yeah.
So Matt, tell us a little bit about your slides.
It's really hard to follow, Christy.
I
That was
know.
excellent.
She
That was
did a great
excellent.
job.
So here at Cassidy, our annual fund, as I've elaborated, it runs the entire year. We do have a participation focused month. We're in that right now. Actually, it's called our Lead the Way, and it's really focused on our alumni and our current parents. But our fundraising year typically starts, and mind you, our fiscal year is July to June, but our fundraising typically starts about April. Before that July, and we start again with our faculty and our staff and our trustees. Typically, the director of annual giving, her name's Katie Blake James. She's class of 1990 here. She's awesome. But she and I typically will go and visit with each of our 4 divisions to talk to the teachers about the importance of the annual fund. And to say that they get super excited about giving would be it'd be a misnomer. Sometimes you get some rolled eyes, but they understand that from our point that it is really crucial that they give it 100%. In addition, the trustees, it's part of their onboarding process, and we're very, very upfront and transparent about our expectations of them giving, to the point where we ask them to give at the leadership circle level. I mean, most of them already do, but if they don't, we're very explicit that we expect them to be leadership circle level givers. And so by the time we hit July and the annual fund starts, typically those 2 groups, not typically, they are at 100%. So when we start talking with our constituents, you know, our alums, our current parents, past parents, friends, grandparents, we talk about that they're at 100%. So the individuals that are leading the school and are really where the wheels hit the road, they're all in.
Mhm.
This is an example of our mailer that goes full community about August. Typically, it's the first or second week of school. And so one of the things that it made me laugh that Christy was talking about 3 years ago, we stopped having themes. It was sort of a joint decision between the communication and the marketing staffs that we're going to develop our brochures, we're going to develop our asks, but we don't have a theme every year any longer. So essentially what you see is Cassidy's future is brighter with your gift today. We just kind of say that in a lot of different ways, but we don't have a theme. One of the things that I like to be able to point out with this is I did something similar to Christy whenever I first started. Again, being that my kids are at school here, I would drop my kids off and then I would go to the carpool line and I would just sit there and I would talk to parents and I'd say, what does the annual fund mean to you? What do you think the annual fund does? And I was flabbergasted by their responses because almost without fail, they couldn't tell me what the annual fund was or what it does.
Yep.
And so it gave us an opportunity to really move that ball forward. So you'll see on the right side, the 2020-21 annual fund help too. And these are examples of items, explicit, very clear to see items that the annual fund supported. Our annual fund mainly provides unrestricted support to the school. But if a parent so wishes or a donor so wishes, they can actually direct their area of support within. So the greatest need, athletics, faculty, financial aid, St. Edward's Chapel, or academic programs. We very rarely actually will have a parent direct their annual fund gift to anything else other than the greatest need. But we feel that it's important to give them that option. And then I also want to point out the True Blue Society. So part of what you should be doing with your annual fund every year, it's important to try and keep the donors that you have while getting new donors. And for those donors that you have, it's always important to get them thinking, okay, about increasing their gift. And so our True Blue Society is when somebody gives the previous year, but increases their gift 10%. And so with that, there's additional things that come with being a member of the True Blue Society. We'll have special events throughout the year. And we actually, there's gifts, like they have a yard sign and things like that we'll give them throughout the year.
That's a very cool idea. I really like that. I've heard lots of things around leadership gifts, but never, hey, this is what happens if you keep increasing. I love that. I think it's fantastic.
It's sort of a sticky wicket. I mean, for me, I'm a firm believer and that I don't ever ask anybody to do something I'm not willing to do myself. And so, my family, we give at the leadership circle level, which you'll see on the next slide, begins at $1,000. And so you start there and you start increasing it 10%. So by the time my kids graduate high school,
your own idea may have broken you.
Yeah, giving the school a lot of money. One of the things that I wanted to show you guys was the pledge card that will go out with our main mailer in the fall. So a couple of things that I want to point out. So you'll see that we've got our leadership circle levels. We also have our young alumni gift levels. When you're soliciting your young alums, which are typically what we would say 4 years after graduation, if you can get them in that early, that's tremendous. But one of the things that's also really good is that if you get your young alumni to start giving at that age, you start being able to track their information. Because I bet Christy would tell you one of the hardest things to do is to be able to track your seniors, because when they go to college, they stop talking to you as much. And so one thing with the pledge card is it's not only allowing your donor to pledge, but it's also collecting information. One of the things that I think you have to include, and again, it's a topic for a whole nother webinar, but one of the things that I have included on every bit of information that we send out in pledge cards is I have included Cassidy School in my estate plans. Every bit of information that we send out to alums, current parents, past parents, friends of the school has this included. If any good fundraiser will tell you that most often the largest single gift that's made to an institution will be a playing gift. The largest gift Cassie's ever received was a playing gift. The more that you know about those playing gifts, the better off you're going to be. But this is an example of a pledge card that we send out every year. We keep a ton of them here to give to people if they have questions. You'll see that there are lots of different ways to give. They can give credit card, they can write a check, they can pledge. You can break down that pledge into multiple payments. We have a couple of parents that do that. You'll see that there's information about my company will match this gift. That is a really important part too, because lots of companies do have that philanthropic match that they'll do throughout the year. The more information that you can gather about your donors and put it into your database, the better off you're going to be moving forward. And pledge cards like this really help you capture that information.
Matt, thank you for this, because I think I really like the idea of a couple of things. Number one, the greatest need of the school. I think you're right. We would say to people, hey, you can designate if you want, but most people don't. But I like the idea of the greatest need. I like those words. So, and I like all of this is good. This is a good example of a great pledge card.
So again, and I think it's actually kind of kismet that Christy and I were the ones on the call that our annual funds kind of run different. Ours runs all year and we do focus on it all year. But what that means is that there's seasons to what we do. So in the fall is really where we're looking to raise the most money. So when we send out our initial mailer in late August, early September, we will typically get a return of between $400,000 to $450,000. Then we kind of wait a little bit. Katie and I continue to have our one-on-one meetings. We continue to go out and meet personally with our donors. One thing that you can't take for granted is what we call our live bunt list, last year, but not this year. And so we track when our donors typically give. And if our donor misses a month, let's say a donor gives in November every year and has for 10 years, and then all of a sudden November comes and goes and we haven't seen that donation, we call them, we check in on them. We see if there's something that might have changed in their life, or you never know. And sometimes all they need is that little nudge, but there are seasons to what we do. The second big season will be in December. And so in December, we actually send this out. This goes to our donors that are at $5,000 and above. And what we also do is we give them a little Cassidy ornament that has kind of become a staple of what we do. This was an idea that Katie had about 4 years ago. And where we can, we personally deliver these ornaments, but it's just our way of saying thank you. There's also a mailer that goes out that looks very similar to this, that goes out to those that haven't donated yet. And it really gives them an opportunity to write in a small thank you to a member of our faculty or staff, which we in turn deliver to them. But in order to do that, they have to make a donation. And so in December is our second push. We'll typically raise another $450,000 during that time, which then allows us to go into the spring, and it's much more about participation. Right. You can go to the next slide. So one of the things that you have to start thinking about whenever, so one of the slides that Mary Catherine showed us earlier showed the who, right? And so we had alumni, we had current parents, we had parishioners, we had grandparents. And in some cases, there's power in segmenting what you're doing. So if you're going to segment what you're doing, then you also have to create a hierarchy for how you're going to communicate with people. And for us here at Cassidy, it begins with current parents, then alumni, and on down. Grandparents cannot be missed. In some cases, grandparents are actually the ones paying the tuition. These are the ones that sent their own kids to an independent school that they believe in, and now they're sending their grandkids to an independent school that they believe in. You can't leave out grandparents. This is an example of segmented mailing. This went just to grandparents. We had a lot of success with this in the last year. Because of COVID, the last two actually, we've had virtual grandparents days, and we receive anywhere between $50,000 to $100,000 from our grandparents just from that event. The flip side of it is it also allows us to collect a bunch of information about them so that we can further segment our mailing. But this is just an example of how we choose to segment our mailers. I think you can.
Okay, hang on.
I think that was it.
Is that it?
That's great.
Yeah, and we do year end. And just like Christy said, we never turn down a gift. I mean, anytime that someone wants to donate to the school, we are there to listen and to help them facilitate that gift. But again, it's just an example of different touches throughout the year.
Yeah, and I love what you said about the segmented mailing. I think that's really important. Different times, different constituencies. I think it's important. So we do have a question. I'm curious how you capture your grandparents' information. Do you start with an event or do you ask parents for that information? I know that we did that, like on our application, we had information about grandparents. If people wanted to give information about grandparents, how do you guys do that?
That's exactly how we do it. We ask when parents are, so within our database, when a parent is applied to the school, they're accepted, they start, there's an informational packet that they'll fill out. One of those is, sometimes that we catch as emergency contacts or other people that might be here on campus to pick up, little Jimmy or little Jenny. And so that's how we capture it. But then we follow up by sending the grandparent a mailer, just confirming their information, because then we couch it in a way that we want to and make sure they're included in Grandparents' Day.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so we're at the top of the hour. I just want to reiterate to you guys that are on this call that you're going to get all of this information. It's a lot, and we appreciate so much just Matt and Christy offering so many good resources. As I've always said, I think this association is the best about sharing, and it's the case method. It's the copy and steal everything. We're a family in this association, and we want to help each other. So Matt and Christy, both of you have so much knowledge. I hope that you will, if you don't mind, sticking your email in the chat. If there's anybody that has a question about something that you've put out, y'all have been so gracious and so generous. And so I'd really love to have you put that in there so that people can reach out if they need to. And of course, you can always reach out to me here at SAES. I learned the hard way about fundraising, and it was simply just really by failing. And thank you, Christy, for pointing that out in the beginning. It's definitely important that we be willing to fail and try things. That's how we learn, right? Mm-hmm. So having said that, thank you so much. I appreciate you, and I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording for those of us. We'll stick around for just a minute if you have any other questions, but I'm going to stop the recording now. Thanks for joining us.